Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Mid South Wrestling um, review series for the 30th of December, 1981. This is a highlight show, and it's going to be relatively quick because I don't know the backstories enough of the matches to be able to give you more in-depth stuff, which frustrates me. But I mean, when only certain stuff's available on the network, I can only do what I can do. We'll be going back and looking for pre-December 81 stuff at the end of what's available on the network. But anyway, we basically get a highlight show with Bill Watts doing the majority of stuff. We're told Jackson, Mississippi, October 15th, Fairgrounds is the majority of the highlights here. Mike George and the JYD versus the Wild Samoans. Of course, Afa and Sika, the Wild Samoans. The beginning of the Samoan dynasty, or much of the beginning of the Samoan dynasty. And obviously, at this point, they're the tag team champions. The JYD obviously going to town on both of the Samoans. Meanwhile, Ernie Ladd on the outside, he's trying to keep his team good to go and ready to go and raring to go and all that good stuff. Mike George is apparently a regular partner for uh, a regular partner for the JYD, which I don't really understand it, but anyway, JYD uses his power advantage for the majority of time, headbutts and such on his adversaries, clears house pretty well for the first several minutes. We then, or at least of the highlights anyway, JYD headbutts all the way around. Ernie Ladd gets himself in trouble being at ringside, and this big thump slam leads to a modified victory, but a run in there. From the outside and some shots lead to a breakup. The referee was not available for that pinfall attempt, and the Samoans get blasted with a chair, sent down to the outside. This time, 1, 2, 3, and Mike George and JYD are victorious. We go back to Bill Watts, who gives us some hype for the next segment we are going to see. That next segment is highlights of, again, Mike George and JYD. Let's see here. Another tag match here. Highlights of the Orndorffs versus JYD and Mike George. I assume that is Paul and I don't even know. Terry Orndorff seems too soon, but anyway, Orndorff pretty dominant here with JYD actually using his head as a weapon, which is kind of a weird turnaround. Orndorff again seen as a major heel at the time, staying on JYD, and of course I'm assuming they had a heck of a program there during that time. Big pile driver, among other things, by Orndorff. Orndorff and JYD stay in for the majority of this particular version of a contest. Double tackle together, and then we see the victory for the baby faces, which leads to uproar for the Orndorffs. We move then to a third bit of a match, or a clip from a match. This time, highlights of Orndorff and Roop against JYD and George. Once again, Orndorff in majority control for a good bit of that. George sidesteps and makes a tag to JYD. JYD comes in, clears house, does a lot of that, as it were, and Bob Roop not really intimidated by the JYD, stands with him in brawls. Mike George, who is seemingly a loyal friend to the JYD, helps to tip his teammate into a pinning position. All four guys in craziness there. One thing I like about Mid South is that they definitely have a commitment to the tag team division, even if the number of teams is more small than other companies at the time. Pile driver on the floor attempted and not gotten on the outside. Interference, and that takes the JYD away from the main focus of the match, obviously. JYD always dealing with outside interference and dealing with people trying to limit his ability to continue. And obviously, that is a major issue. So, we move back into the ring, and eventually that leads to a double axe handle from the outside for the heels and some cheating. Referee calls for the bell there. We move, I think then we move to a highlight package of Dusty Rhodes, if I'm correct. Yep, Dusty Rhodes rivalry with the Great Kabuki. Rhodes obviously a big deal for the nature of, fighting, and Kabuki a pretty big challenge for a guy like Dusty Rhodes. Rhodes, of course, comes in mainly for the stadium-style shows. Bill Watts pretty insistent that Dusty Rhodes is one of the best in the country. Some would agree, some would disagree, but we see Kabuki being led around by Gary Hart. Kabuki, and of course, Hart and Rhodes go back to Florida. That's a pretty big deal. Kabuki does many promos towards Dusty Rhodes, wanting to eradicate Rhodes. Rhodes promises to get rid of the big nasty Kabuki, and we don't really get to see much in the way of actual work between these two. Again, highlight shows like this I do not like, because although they give you, ins and outs sort of things, if you're not watching weekly, covering them is a little wonky. And we go back to Bill Watts after those promos, and we see, I believe now we go into the Orndorff DiBiase North American title series type stuff, which is still going on at that particular juncture as we enter 1982. DiBiase, of course, a major force, and guy that probably is, up until maybe Dr. Death Steve Williams in later years, kind of there. Highlights of DiBiase and Orndorff. DiBiase, the better technical wrestler, big surprise there. At one point considered for the NWA World Championship. He's running around and managing to hit a cross body. DiBiase, obviously a guy who, and everything is going back to that October 15th, 81 show. Maybe I need to try and find that on YouTube somewhere, because it seems like every highlight is from that. DiBiase working the arm bar, kind of not backing down from Orndorff at all, and they go for several minutes. DiBiase manages to get caught with some illegal stuff, not to mention a back suplex by Orndorff. Orndorff pretty aggressive with his power on DiBiase here, trying to get a Hangman's Noose style submission, which he doesn't get. DiBiase off and kind of gets a power slam there. 1, 2, and out the back door. Orndorff does not get the victory. He's upset with the referee. Attempted a pile driver, doesn't get that done either. And, that kind of continues the feud between DiBiase and Orndorff will continue here. Then we go to highlights of Ted DiBiase and Ed Wiskowski. That is a pretty big deal there. Much more a brawling style. Wiskowski, of course, big deal in the AWA, big deal in Portland, and DiBiase goes right to work on the arm, spends a good bit on the arm. Wiskowski willing to cheat and take some cheap shots at DiBiase throughout. Irish whips by Wiskowski, shoulder tackle by DiBiase, and DiBiase manages a couple of body slams, gets a near fall. DiBiase has been protected, as best I can tell, for most of 1981, or at least when he's here. His time in Mid-South, he's protected. Of course, he's one of Bill Watts' favorite people, and when you are a Bill Watts devotee, he will protect you quite a bit. Unfinished business, as we learned, between Wiskowski and DiBiase here as we close. And then we go to highlights of Jimmy Garvin and Ed Wiskowski. This is meant to highlight Wiskowski's, I guess you'd say, danger or intensity, that sort of thing, going through that time and space. And then, obviously Wiskowski comes out ahead there using power, using dominance, and Garvin really hasn't found himself quite yet. Doesn't really find himself till world class in '83, in my opinion. Gets hung upside down in the corner. Wiskowski tries to kick, punch, and poke prod, do everything he possibly can to Garvin to keep him off kilter. Garvin does do a little bit of fighting back from underneath. Nothing major, nothing, showing himself to be huge or anything like that, but some continuations there. And short knee by Wiskowski, followed by the, I guess you'd say, throat gut. And Wiskowski comes out ahead there in the highlights. And the final highlight, back to about 5 minutes of DiBiase and Orndorff. Orndorff runs into the corner using his advantage, any advantage he can get over DiBiase, and sends him throat first into that buckle. DiBiase, though, manages a cutoff and manages to kick around with things here. And the figure four by DiBiase is pretty intense. Obviously, DiBiase and the figure four are pretty synonymous with each other. Of course, Ric Flair at the time has been a world champion in the NWA, also using the figure four. I did not realize that, or had forgotten anyway, that DiBiase was such a big deal there. The referee steps in on stopping this non-title match, and basically DiBiase can't intelligently defend himself, and that will close 1981 World South. Obviously, we're going to come back, try to find some other 81 stuff at a later point. But for right now, we're going into 1982. Stay with us. We'll be back with more right after this.